Those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. A special welcome to all listeners on love101.org. And if you are overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live in the main watch today. A Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, A or nay? And in the second watch, are groups like Christians being targeted in diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI programs? For our social media question, we ask, which would you prefer, the CCJ or the Privy Council? Share your responses in our Facebook or YouTube Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share a conversation on the program, but first is I quote.
Good morning, good morning. Today's I quote says, work for it. Oh, don't wish for it, work for it. And this is an anonymous quote today. So I guess I'll just say I said it because there's no...
Don't wish for it, work for it. Are you the anonymous person, Juka?
Might as well.
Good morning, boss. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
All is well?
Yes, all is well.
As they say in the streets, what a go on me, Jenna? Everything all right?
Everything Chris.
Everything Chris. Oh, yes, everything governed.
Right. That's what the kids say nowadays.
The main watch. Don't ask me where I got those words, right? The main watch will be back after this break.
Get ready for another inspiring show this Testimony Tuesday inside Alive 1 to 5 January 16, packed with inspirational stories and island-flavored music. 1:45, we bring you the brain testing Size Listener's Pick Edition. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayer bells of heaven. 2:15 inside the evidence, we hear the story of Donna Morris, who for years struggled with impoverished thoughts, doubts, and was stuck in a poor mindset of limitations. But God gave her strength. Then at 3 p.m., we go behind the pulpit with the anointed man of God, Reverend Kirk Campbell, who will join us to share his journey. All the time will come alive 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. January 16 on the family station, Love 101.
On the next Campus Connection, we turn the spotlight on technological upgrade in our schools. There is a great desire for our education system to be outfitted with technological tools for our children to advance. Are our youth being exposed to the use of technology in learning at an early age? Is the advancement of technology helping or harming our children? How does an institution protect large volumes of data as it moves towards digitization of records? Let's join the conversation with Mr. Leon Chisholm, Principal, and Mr. Andre Morgan, an IT Specialist, and don't miss our special interview with Dr. Trevor Dixon, Team Lead on the Jaja Foundation Medical Mission for Change 2024. This all happens on Tuesday, January 16 at 5:30 p.m. on the family station, Love 101.
There is every year on the third Thursday in January, the National Leadership Prayer Breakfast Committee hosts the National Leadership Prayer Breakfast. This is the 44th annual staging under the theme Choose Hope, Arise and Build. Join in the National Leadership Prayer Week, Tuesday, January 16. Pray for private sector leaders. Then on Thursday, January 18, it will be the 44th annual National Leadership Prayer Breakfast at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel.
Chantal, live on Love 101 FM. It's a special week of prayer for Jamaica, land we love. The National Leadership Prayer Week, prayer service, and prayer breakfast. Love 101 endorsed events.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. The discussion continues concerning the Privy Council or the CCJ. Now, what are the issues and considerations for and against? What say you, A or nay, to the CCJ? That's the question. Our guest at the moment is Mr. Jalil Dabdoub. He's an attorney at law, and he recently wrote an article, or he wrote something quite interesting on this matter of the Privy Council in relation to the CCJ. Good morning, Council. How are you? Mr. Dabdoub?
Good morning, Mr. Marshall.
Great having you, Mr. Dabdoub. Haven't seen or heard from you in a little while. Great seeing you albeit virtually, sir.
Same.
Now, sir, getting right into it in terms of the CCJ or the Privy Council. Now, just generally speaking, if you could just enlighten the listeners, those watching on YouTube, etc., objections to the CCJ, if any, and if so, why any objections? Or I could even widen the question a little bit, because, you know, some persons prefer the Privy Council, some would rather the CCJ. You have arguments about us having grown up as a country. Just to give some context to the question, Mr. Dabdoub.
Yeah, to be quite honest, Mr. Marshall, I will say that at first, over the years, I've traditionally been in favor of retaining the Privy Council for various reasons. Recently, I wouldn't say I've changed my mind totally, but I am reconsidering the basis of keeping the Privy Council. And it goes to, I believe, what you just spoke about, whether we have grown up and whether we should close that door on our final sovereignty. I think that is at the root of it, in my humble opinion.
Understood. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Are we and should we now take full control of the final arm of government over which we don't have full sovereignty, and make sure that we have control, or should I say more control, or our own peoples have control over our destiny on the legal side of government, meaning in the judiciary? There are obviously pros and cons for the CCJ and for the Privy Council, in my view. I don't think it's a clear-cut black and white issue at all. I think it is something, though, that we hear various commentators making strong arguments on. We've heard the opposition traditionally over the years. I think their position is well known. In my view, I haven't heard enough from this government in terms of educating us, telling us where their position is, what is the reasons for and against it in their evaluation as a political party, particularly the political party that is currently forming the government. That is my, I would say, basic position as it relates to the CCJ or the Privy Council.
We hope to have Wendell Wilkins, attorney at law, on. I'm not sure if he's on as yet, but pending his arrival on the platform, Mr. Dabdoub, there have been some concerns as it relates to, in terms of jurisdiction. The CCJ, as we know, it would cover more than one Caribbean territory, more than one Caribbean sovereign state, and it would not be Jamaica's final court. And some could argue that if you're going to move away from a court which currently serves more than one country, albeit the country of a previous colonizer, why then move to another court which isn't really ours either, but it's part of a collective in the Caribbean region, if you could use that sort of terminology. Any comments on that, Mr. Dabdoo? It's not Jamaica's court, it's a Caribbean court.
I have heard and I've read of that from various persons, and it is a good point. However, I would say certainly the CCJ would be more our court than the Privy Council. That is for sure. The drawback to me is that those who express concern with the CCJ, those concerns are heightened when the court is a Jamaican court. Because one of the concerns, I think, with the CCJ is the fact that it's a small society.
A small Caribbean society.
A small Caribbean society. So if it is that we, say, have our own Jamaican final court and not the CCJ, we're talking about an even smaller society. Again, there are various drawbacks, in my opinion, to a small society.
I think you're delving somewhat into the recent article you wrote in for one of our major newspaper publications, because you did make a point along those lines. Would you like to develop on that area, sir?
Well, I think that all courts, and I just want to start by saying, putting things in perspective, a legal system should strive to have certain ideals.
Yes.
One of those ideals, of course, is as little interference from outside as possible. In fact, it should be zero interference to have, I would say, utopia is our objective. Obviously, we can never achieve utopia in anything as it relates to governance. However, in a small societies, I think the risk of interference is heightened because of the fact that, and it may not be purposeful interference, it could be.
I totally understand, Mr. W. If I could weigh in just for one moment, sir. In fact, I don't know if Mr. Wilkins is coming on now. Maybe he's coming on now. But before we get a comment from him, it could be something quite simple, Mr. Dabdoo. As uncomfortable as it may be to say this, in our relatively small Caribbean society, a CCJ judge may very well have taught an attorney who appears before him or her to argue a case. In other words, you may very well have taught this now legal counsel, this now attorney, when they were a student at the Faculty of Law, maybe at Kville or in Trinidad, or wherever. Mona, any comments on that, Mr. Dabdoo? I mean, as simple as it may sound.
No, that is actually one of the examples I was using.
Yes.
And the fact is that we have to appreciate we are all human beings made of flesh and blood, including the judges.
Yes.
And whether we want to say it or not, and whether it comes up to the point of being legal bias, so to speak, there is that influence of, for example, if you and I were in class together and I was a class clown and you were the scholar.
Yes.
It is not unexpected if we both appear before our former teacher. All of a sudden, I don't think the credence paid to what I have to say and submit is as strong as you, who already have a track record of establishing yourself as being a top student. It could be something as simple as that.
As simple as that, yes.
Some people would brush it aside.
I know, yes.
But it is a consideration. And of course, you have the other consideration where you reach up to the political level, where the president of the court may have gone to school with the prime minister of Trinidad or the prime minister of Jamaica. I just throwing out examples, you know.
Yeah, hypotheticals, but not to be ignored. But we are already upon a break, Mr. Dabdoob. We're going to get back to you shortly. And Mr. Wilkins, we haven't forgotten you at all. Listeners, don't go anywhere at all. We will be right back on the Morning Watch.
Me pull up at the gas station and the attendant come up.
87 or 90?
I don't know why him think I would put 87 in my new car. But me inside. But when he said
Cash or card?
me say, big man, why would I take my cash and buy gas? I pay for everything with my Surgical Bank credit card. Grocery, gas, bills. Cause when you use your card, you get your reward. If I pay cash, you are gonna give me a reward.
We can wipe your windscreen.
Earn the best rewards ever with Surgical Bank credit cards. Conditions apply.
Get ready for another inspiring show this Testimony Tuesday inside Alive 1 to 5 January 16, packed with inspirational stories and island flavored music. 1:45, we bring you the brain testing Menticize Listener Speak Edition. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayer bells of heaven. 2:15 inside the evidence, we hear the story of Donna Morris, who for years struggled with impoverished thoughts, doubts, and was stuck in a poor mindset of limitations. But God gave her strength. Then at 3 p.m., we go behind the pulpit with the anointed man of God, Reverend Kirk Campbell, who will join us to share his journey. All the time will come alive 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. January 16 on the family station, Love 101.
On the next Campus Connection, we turn the spotlight on technological upgrade in our schools. There is a great desire for our education system to be outfitted with technological tools for our children to advance. Are our youth being exposed to the use of technology in learning at an early age? Is the advancement of technology helping or harming our children? How does an institution protect large volumes of data as it moves towards digitization of records? Let's join the conversation with Mr. Leon Chisholm, Principal, and Mr. Andre Morgan, an IT specialist, and don't miss our special interview with Dr. Trevor Dixon, Team Lead on the Jaja Foundation Medical Mission for Change 2024. This all happens on Tuesday, January 16 at 5:30 p.m. on the family station, Love 101.
She can burn. She can burn. Increase the tempo. She can burn. Nutrition for your lifestyle. She can burn. We are kick. Boy football season. She can burn. Try the delicious new flavors today. Chocolate, vanilla, peanut, and she can burn.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the first watch and we are speaking to Attorney at Law Jalil Dabdoob and Attorney at Law Wendell Wilkins. The topic this morning is a CCJ, a Caribbean Court of Justice, A or nay. And just before the break, Mr. Dabdoob, we were looking at some of the potential sources of influence, albeit subtle, maybe some not so subtle. Mr. Wilkins, any comments, sir? And before you comment, I want to make reference to something which I'm not able to pull up right now due to a connectivity issue, but I am reminded that UN Women, United Nations Women, is one of the international agencies which has indicated quite clearly, it's not a secret, that they collaborate with a number of agencies, including the Caribbean Court of Justice, or entities or bodies to be more specific. And I'm just thinking if a particular church, the Roman Catholic Church, or the Jamaica umbrella group of churches was known to have such a, or any sort of collaboration, so to speak, with such a body, You might hear a hue and cry, but this is the UN woman. Do you think that that is an issue of concern? I know the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthier Society has very serious issues with that, and other groups such as that. Any comments, Mr. Wilkins? If you can hear us, can you hear us, Mr. Wilkins? Or are you muted by chance? Mr. Wilkins? I don't think we have him on. Mr. Wilkins, can you hear us? Okay, let's hearing you. Okay, we're hearing you now, Mr. Wilkins. Well, you heard the question, or it was quite a lengthy question.
Somewhat.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, let's see if we can hear what you're saying at the moment. We're hearing you.
Okay, there are some concerns regarding the Caribbean Court of Justice because there is what is deemed by some organizations a liberal approach to the interpretation of constitutional rights.
Okay.
And therefore, there is a fear that they will adopt certain approaches to the tools of how you interpret constitutions in a liberal way, and therefore adopt certain norms that are developing in other countries and infuse it in the Caribbean countries. One of that area is the question of same-sexness that is of great interest to many countries and nations and peoples and organizations. Now, the position of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in terms of the interpretation of constitutional rights and equality and freedom from discrimination and so forth, it has a tendency of looking at what is the intent of the Constitution through the legislators. So if the legislator says X, then the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council have a tendency of deference to the intent of the domestic legislator than join upon cases that are there as precedents to say what the law is. So there might be a fear of more judicial activism in the Caribbean Court of Justice than the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council.
Very interesting, and one would have thought that since the Caribbean Court of Justice is a Caribbean court, there would likely be a little bit more of an attachment to the sentiments on sexual mores here in the Caribbean. Mr. Dabdu, I've never heard you make any comments along those lines, but if you wish to weigh in, please do.
Well, I would hope, and that was one of my concerns actually with retaining the Privy Council, is that they may impose on us their own philosophies of democratic rights, etc. For example, I use an example of what is happening in other democratic nations, such as the US and some of the European nations, who are passing anti-hate laws, for example. And I think for those anti-hate laws are a stretch and impinge on the democratic rights of persons for free speech, freedom of expression, etc. So it's quite interesting that Mr. Wilkins, is sharing a similar view to me.
Yes,
However, Mr. Wilkins, while sharing a similar view to me, is saying that he's afraid that that comes on the Caribbean Court of Justice side. I will say that if there is to be judicial activism, and if judges are to impose their philosophies on us, then in that case, it is best, it is our own people and our own values that are imposed on us. And I think that is where I have a personal struggle in terms of whether we should accede to the CCJ or retain the Privy Council. because at some point the final analysis is going to come down to, despite the benefits of the Privy Council and despite the drawbacks of the CCJ, is the most important question control of our own institutions. And when I say control, I don't mean it in an egregious manner. I mean, I think a better word is repatriation of our own institutions, which reflect our values and which we try and insulate our values as best as possible from the values of other countries. And I think that's what Mr. Wilkins is saying, but just on the reverse.
Interesting, because every time I read where the UN Women refer to the CCJ as one of the bodies with which it collaborates, I keep wondering, well, what if it were a church? I mean, obviously, there'd be a lot of criticism of that, I think. Well, you mentioned something, Mr. Dabdub, about anti-hate laws, and I don't want to digress too much because we're focusing on the CCJ, but Mr. Wilkins, any comments in relation to Jamaica thinking of having laws against hate speech? Because what exactly is hate speech?
Yes, that is a problematic area because there are persons who are of a religious background and there are persons who believe in their faith and in their Bible, and they wish as a constitutional right to express it freely while they do not hate anybody or they despise anybody, but they want all the views to contend and to spread what they call the gospel. But some people believe, and there are instances that have been revealed up north, where if you resort to the Bible as your religious belief base, you are classified as being involved in hate speech. So there is a conflation of the constitutional right in a democracy to express your religious belief and your practices to others, and this question of whether it's hate speech or not. But at the end of the day, I believe in these matters, the local people must decide by vote, a fair, free, and democratic vote, whether they want the CCJ or they want to retain the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. The only problem with that is that sometimes those kinds of voting becomes partisan political, and people do not vote on issues, but they vote on party allegiance, and that is a danger sometimes of going to the people. But the people must decide what they want.
Understood. And I totally agree with that. There is, in fact, a recent case from Scandinavia, which I don't have it with me at the moment, but it's pretty recent, where a former government representative, maybe similar to our sort of parliament, but in that particular Scandinavian country, where she was pretty much taken through the courts and has at the moment been exonerated. But I gather that there's an appeal from the other side. Essentially, she had posted something on a social media site which was considered to be objectionable. And she made reference to the Bible, and it was being looked upon as if it were hate speech. And it has been quite a test for her personally as an individual. So I understand the hate speech law issue. Where do we go from here? I have my own views on the CCJ. I've always questioned whether or not we should go in that direction, even though it seems to be a minority position whenever you say anything that doesn't appear to welcome the CCJ. But gentlemen, your final thoughts. Mr. Dabdu, followed by Mr. Wilkins. Mr. Dabdu?
Well, like I indicated previously, is the bottom line is going to be that, one, we need rigorous public debate. I don't fully share your view that there is a minority. A lot of people I've spoken to are questioning whether we should.
Appears to be a minority, I should probably have said.
Yes. A lot of people are questioning whether we should leave the Privy Council. A lot of people need to be educated on the issues. And I think when we have that rigorous public debate, it is going to boil down to weighing the pros and cons and deciding whether we, as a people, want to have our own final court of appeal, reflecting our own values and our own self-determination, or we are prepared to accept a foreign court, even, I just say for the purposes of argument, let us assume that the Privy Council is a better judicial body than the Privy Council. I mean the CCJ. Just for the purposes of argument, we should look at it from that perspective. Assuming that we are getting a lesser court, is it more important for us that we have our own values?
Only because of time, I'm going to ask you to end your thought right there. And in fact, maybe the position I'm taking is that of the silent majority. But alas, we're completely out of time. I'm getting another signal. Mr. Wilkins, would have loved a comment from you, but alas, no more time at all. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time and for your thoughts. Mr. Dabdu and Mr. Wilkins, thank you very much. Listeners, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Bank, everything possible with a little savings in your hand.
The time by Jan Bank is
7:32.
from generation to generation. Jamaicans have depended on Jan Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. JN Bank will help you find a way.
Welcome to Deeper Life School of Evangelism, where you study on to God. Registration is in progress for new semester. No age limit, no CXC required. Attend classes once per week or twice per month. Discover your spiritual gifts. Deeper Life School is in Montego Bay, Mandeville, Mapen, Ocherous, and Kingston. Call to register at 923-1040 or 829-9798. Deeper Life is your ideal Bible training school.
On the next Campus Connection, we turn the spotlight on technological upgrade in our schools. There is a great desire for our education system to be outfitted with technological tools for our children to advance. Are our youth being exposed to the use of technology in learning at an early age? Is the advancement of technology helping or harming our children? How does an institution protect large volumes of data as it moves towards digitization of records? Let's join the conversation with Mr. Leon Chisholm, Principal, and Mr. Andre Morgan, an IT specialist, and don't miss our special interview with Dr. Trevor Dixon, Team Lead on the Jaja Foundation Medical Mission for Change 2024. This all happens on Tuesday, January 16 at 5:30 p.m. on the Family Station, Love 101.
Get ready for another inspiring show this Testimony Tuesday inside Alive 1 to 5 January 16, packed with inspirational stories and island-flavored music. 1:45, we bring you the brain testing Menticize Listener Speak Edition. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayer bells of heaven. 2:15 inside the evidence, we hear the story of Donna Morris, who for years struggled with impoverished thoughts, doubts, and was stuck in a poor mindset of limitations. But God gave her strength. Then at 3 p.m., we go behind the pulpit with the anointed man of God, Reverend Kirk Campbell, who will join us to share his journey. All the time will come alive 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. January 16 on the Family Station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's take a look now at the newspapers to see what the Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And we have the physical copy this morning of the Daily Observer. We have here on the front page, Jackson, that would be referring to Fitz Jackson, Member of Parliament, rejects Prime Minister's claim of no political reasons for making Portmore a parish. We also have a very concerning story here on the front page. This is death. This is death. Motorist recalls frightening experience after oil spill causes multi-vehicle crash on Spur Tree Road. Motorist Jackie Dunbar relates her frightening experience during Monday morning's multi-vehicle crash on the Spur Tree Hill main road. We attempt to turn now quickly to the Gleaner online. I just probably require a moment here to pull it up online. I think we're here now. More CEOs fear that companies won't survive 10 years as artificial intelligence and climate challenges grow, survey says. And code of conduct coming for LPG sector, says Energy Minister. We also have PNP says internal polls show it's leading in municipal corporations. And another one, just to squeeze in another one, fueled by unprecedented border crossings, a record 3 million cases clog U.S. immigration courts. Very interesting indeed. Those and many other stories in our major daily newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read for some of the feedback from our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp question, which is, which would you prefer, the CCJ or the Privy Council? If you haven't done so yet, leave your responses on our Facebook or YouTube, Love One from Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp your comments and voice notes to 876-9973-125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
There is every year on the third Thursday in January, the National Leadership Prayer Breakfast Committee hosts the National Leadership Prayer Breakfast. This is the 44th annual staging under the theme Choose Hope, Arise and Build. Join in the National Leadership Prayer Week, Tuesday, January 16. Pray for private sector leaders. Then on Thursday, January 18, it will be the 44th annual National Leadership Prayer Breakfast at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel, live on Love 101 FM. It's a special week of prayer for Jamaica, land we love. The National Leadership Prayer Week, prayer service, and prayer breakfast. Love 101 endorsed events.
I am a man, yes. You can't afford to miss the next episode of The Mailbox as we explore the topic, Man na Ball, Invite. Part 1. Men have been socialized to stifle their emotions inside instead of feeling safe enough to share their authentic feelings. It appears that the only emotion accepted from men by the society is anger, which if not managed correctly can be destructive. You're invited to join the conversation with our esteemed guest, Mr. Owen Blacker Ellis, on Wednesday, January 17 at 5:30 p.m. on the family station, Love 101, The Mailbox, Monday.
God commanded the earth to bring forth plant life. He created sea life, fowls, and animals. He made all things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful. The Lord God made them all. Tuesday, January 16, on The Rock, guests Minister Keith Spence and Pastor Lincoln Lewis discuss the topic, The Creation Story. He made flora and fauna. That's The Rock, Tuesday, January 16 at 10 a.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
Hello, welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We get right into the second watch. And in this second watch, we will be looking at the whole matter of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It seems to be something which is becoming more prominent these days. It's gaining a lot of traction in certain jurisdictions. For example, in the United States of America. And we want to explore exactly what that means and some recent utterances of various key persons a particular key person in a major institution in the United States, and explore what that might mean for Jamaica, if anything. Our guests for this segment are Dr. Wayne West. He is the chair of the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. And we also have Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard, Anglican priest, columnist, and author. Dr. West, Reverend Dr. Nemard, good morning.
Good morning, brother. Good morning to your listeners.
Now, first of all, gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Gentlemen, starting with you, Dr. West, what is meant by DEI? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm not sure if you are aware. Well, I believe you are well aware of some recent comments of a particular administrator, if I could call her that, at the Johns Hopkins University. She is a pretty high-ranking individual there. Dr. West?
Well, I don't know of the comment of that particular individual. I know of the comment of someone who is very high in the airline industry, who was suggesting that we remove white male pilots and have more pilots from minority groups, which I think is a very significant statement, because you would want to think that if you're dealing with airlines or any other service, you want people who have capacity, not simply who have a particular identity, whether that is minority or not. But such
well, first of
is
all, Dr. West, how do you define, if I could jump in, Dr. West, so that the listeners can understand what you mean. What do they mean by diversity, firstly, then equity, then inclusion?
Well, diversity means that you must have persons different of whether they're male, female, disabled, and of course, the reason for this whole thing is sexual orientation. So persons of different sexual orientation, you must have those people, your company, because it's really about business, must have a representative from all these different sets of persons. And then equity, everybody must be on the same level. They must be accepted and be made to feel as though whatever they are, whatever they do, it's fine and it's okay, it's accepted by the community. And you must be inclusive. You mustn't critique or make anybody feel as though because of who they are somehow or the other less worthy. Now, again, these things have some good to them, but I believe it is my clear impression that a lot of this was created in order to facilitate the inclusion of persons, not simply women and people who have disabilities and so on, but really the LGBT community, so that their activities become part of the, accepted as part of the whole.
Well, let me read directly from the New York Post, which is what I was making reference to. And the institution is Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins diversity chief labels whites, males, and Christians as privileged. And this is a story by Patrick Riley 4 days ago. A diversity chief at Johns Hopkins Medicine sent a monthly diversity digest email to staff with a letter that declared all white people, Christians, and men as privileged. Dr. Sharita Hill Golden, Chief Diversity Officer at the hospital system, also included heterosexuals and English speakers in the privileged category in her missive to all staff. Reverend Nemad, any comments before we head to the break? Well, I think we're already upon the break. So what I'm going to ask, gentlemen, is that we hold our comments until after this break. Listeners, please do not go anywhere at all. We will be right back on the Morning Walk.
The time is now 7:45 a.m. You're listening to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM.
They're full of life. You're full of love. They're carefree. You care more. That's why we created Child Protector, a critical illness insurance plan from Sagicor Life. It provides coverage for your child in the event of 15 critical illnesses, hospitalization benefits, life insurance, and investment benefits. So make sure your child can live life to the fullest. Apply for Sagicor Child Protector today.
I've been hearing about this constitutional reform thing. You know anything about it?
Yes, constitutional reform is a chance for us to Jamaicanize the constitution.
But how?
Enough things changed since 1962 and we've matured as a nation. So modernizing the constitution will reflect our current societal values.
Oh, a constitution for Jamaicans, approved by Jamaicans.
Are you ready for the journey? Join us on the road to Republic. Think independence, think Republic. A message from the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the second watch, and we are looking at a very interesting topic here. And it relates to groups like Christians being targeted in diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI programs. Our guests are Dr. Wayne West and Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard. Dr. Wayne West, Chairman of the Jamaica Coalition for Healthy Society, and Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard, Anglican priest, columnist, and author. I was about to have you comment at the moment here, Reverend Nemard, but before you do, I would also like, in terms of giving a fuller context or to be, more holistic in what is being said, to quickly indicate that it's reported in the Daily Mail online 20 hours ago. Johns Hopkins Dean apologizes after DEI officer sent woke hit list. I'll read a bit of it. Johns Hopkins Dean apologizes after DEI officer sent woke hit list. Johns Hopkins Medical Faculty Dean has apologized to staff after a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer sent a woke hit list email labeling all white people, Christians, men, and English speakers as privileged. The letter, first posted on Twitter by End Wokeness, was written by Chief Diversity Officer Sharita Hill Golden and was part of the monthly Diversity Digest. It caused commotion and outrage online, forcing the institution to apologize. Dr. Golden was allowed to keep her job despite cries for her to be sacked. Now, the dean and president of the medical faculty say that they repudiated her language. Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard.
Yes, good morning again. Sometimes we make much ado about, certain things that are like in the diversity, equity, inclusion as a very important concept in terms of recognizing the diversity within a particular organization, the equity that ought to bind persons within that organization, and the whole fact of being included. And that's why I couldn't understand why Dr. Golden, Sharita Golden, should have included Christians as part of that motley group of people that she mentioned. She mentioned, for example, heterosexuals. I mean, male and female. I mean, what does a sexual grouping like that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion within a particular company? So I can understand the reason that she came under such criticisms. And she herself pulled back the definition of privilege that she gave, because admitting that it was not a word that added any real substance to the debate and to the definition of what diversity, the DEI concept is all about.
Oh, you're saying that she said that?
Sorry?
You're saying that she pulled it back?
Yeah, she did pull it back. But then that's after all the damage has been done. And, you know, I can understand the pushback that she's getting. But we need to understand, you know, speaking as a Christian, that what we're dealing with is the whole concept of humanity itself. And whether people, by virtue of their talents, by virtue of what they can contribute by using the God-given talents that they have in a particular organization, should not be allowed to be a part of that, well, irrespective of the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, or anything having to do with, you know, the social constructs in which we tend to place people. Are they competent enough, and can they use their talents in particular companies and situations to advance, you know, a dialogue, or to advance the coming together of people as we ought to have it? And why try to segregate and, you know, make a lot of noise about people on the basis of their orientations?
Well, you know, it probably relates a lot to the point being made by Dr. West. You see, I don't think persons, generally speaking, have a problem with inclusion. You know, if you are born a black person or a Chinese person or whatever race, that is an immutable trait. So no problem in including everyone because you're born as black, born as white, Caucasian, whatever the word you want to use. But for certain behaviors which the Bible would declare you're a priest. So for certain behaviors which the Bible declares as sinful, notwithstanding what the Pope has recently indicated about blessing of certain unions, the fact remains that the Bible doesn't change. So should inclusion include the behaviors of persons because that's what they choose to do, as opposed to what the script, meaning the Bible, says? These are questions which are going to arise, and I think that it ties into the point being made by Dr. Wayne West. He seems to be of the view, and there is enough for you to conclude that maybe he's correct, that some of these programs are being embarked upon as a way to include certain groups in a way that doesn't make it seem too obvious. And Dr. West never said that, but I'm extrapolating from what he said. You want to advance the cause of a particular movement, but you don't do that in isolation. You bring a couple other people along with you, but the main thrust and focus is for the persons of that group. Any comments on that, Dr. Nemard? You don't have to agree with anything I said or what you think I'm saying. Any comments, Dr. Nemard?
I understand. I don't know how we came to because the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion matter has been around for quite a while. You know, especially here in the United. Sorry,
it's gaining more traction though.
Yeah, it's gaining more traction now, and perhaps it's because of the sexual orientation issue, where people are clamoring more and more for inclusion, where they had been excluded in the past. But in the United
excluded
States,
or their behaviors excluded. It's all the distinction I was making earlier.
Yeah, but they're excluded from participating on the basis of their orientation.
Is it an orientation suggesting it can't be changed, or is it a behavior which can be changed? Is it the distinction, sir?
Yeah, there is orientation, but there is also practice, and you know,
so you're holding on to the word orientation.
Okay,
I'm asking. It's a genuine question.
Yes, but the assumption that has been made, you know, in terms of like the transgender and the homosexual communities and so on, those who have been identified as distinctly belonging to those communities in the past have been excluded from participation in some of these groupings.
Well, interestingly, if the DEI chief at Johns Hopkins was making the point that some groups are privileged, is that, well, I don't want to get too much into what was in her mind, but when you say that some persons are privileged and some are, on the other hand, without saying so directly, underprivileged, are you now saying that all the attention on, or most of the attention on the resources should be placed on these other groups, such as LGBTQ, such as the disabled, etc.? So what are you saying? If I'm white, if I'm a man, if I'm a Christian, I'm excluded? No, I'm asking.
Well,
so you're trying to achieve equity, but in so doing, you might be doing the opposite. I'm wondering.
Which is exactly what she acknowledged and why she had to apologize. Because how do you use privilege, for example, if a Christian should become a part of a group or included in a group, you say that because they have a sense of privilege, they think they ought to be included. And that is nonsensical. People are included on the basis of their talent and their competence, not on the basis of their religion or their sexuality or their standing in society, social standing.
Understood, Reverend Nemar. Thank you for your comments. Dr. West, any thoughts? Because we're seeing now, you mentioned the airline industry, and I've heard some comments there about even persons who are with certain intellectual challenges, you know, whether they should be allowed to fly planes or not. I thought the primary concern was safety. So, and we've heard the priest here, the Anglican priest here on the platform, make comments about, you know, sexual orientation. I was trying to see if I could shake him on that, but he's unshaken.
Well, I don't know.
Dr. West, any comments?
Well, as I said, that the DEI, you know, this is designed, it's a strategy by the LGBT community using what's called cultural Marxism to analyze things as one group oppressing another to advance their agenda, and how it will affect Christians. And the intentions of that lady from Johns Hopkins was to say Christians, for example, are an oppressive group. They have privilege and they oppress people who have same-sex orientation or who are transgender, for example. And the way it will work out in companies that use that strategy is that if a Christian person were to express a view that the Bible says there is only male and female, two genders, two biological sex, say on their social media platform, like on Facebook, that would go against the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy of the company. And the Christian person is likely to lose their job because they express a biblical perspective. That is a major part of what this is about. As always, it includes good things, but invariably, because its objective is evil, it's going to affect how Christians can function in the company and whether they will be a part of the company, yes or no, because they will be regarded as people who do not support diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the plan. Fortunately, there seem to be people in Johns Hopkins who are not going all the way with this lady, so we haven't got there yet. But that's clearly the plan.
Develop a little bit on cultural Marxism in the time that we may have left, because you kind of said it, but can you elaborate?
Well, Karl Marx developed a theory which led to communism. Basically, he was saying people who owned property, the owners of the means of production, oppressed their workers. So there was this tension in this society between those who own the means of production and those who work for them. Well, cultural Marxism has been extended beyond the money, beyond finance, into the way culture, the culture of the society, things like as sexual orientation. Okay, so someone who says they are transgender, if you were to refer to that person as being abnormal and having a gender dysphoria and needing a medical treatment, you would be regarded as oppressing them, just as the owners of the means of production previously oppressed their workers. So all things cultural, all things related to human behavior are now analyzed in the cultural Marxist ideology as one group oppressing the other group because of their desires, etc., etc. And the whole aim of DEI is to normalize, is to prevent that kind of critique, just like hate speech is to prevent critique.
I think we're completely out of time, Dr. West, but I don't really agree with this whole thing about sexual orientation. Behavior can be changed, and I also understand the cultural Marxism point. I want to thank Reverend Dr. Ralston Nemard. We didn't agree this morning, Reverend Nemard, but that's not a problem.
You know how it is, man.
and Dr. West, thank you as well for your time and for your thoughts. Thank you for being with us, listeners. And join us again tomorrow as we look at topical and controversial issues. Visit the Love 101 FM YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and all other Love 101 FM programs. And listen to the Morning Watch on our Love 101 app and stay connected to us, the family station, the #1 gospel station in Jamaica. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and to our guests. I am Stokeley Marshall, hanging back to Love in the Morning with Chakal.
Thank you for listening to the Morning Watch. Time is now 8:01 a.m. and you are now invited to listen to Forward in Faith.